Welcome to Crushing 1L, a Frasier fan podcast. Just kidding. No. It's a show about crushing and hopefully not being crushed by your first year of law school.
I am Aaminah, and I wanted to say that I am like a Swiss Army knife sort of employee, but when I was running this line by my sister, she looked at me and said, that's something an actual loser would say. In contrast, of course, to the loser I am pretending to be. So, that being said, I will stick with my more official title of Ask Button Responder here with LSAT Demon. And of course, I have the distinct and great pleasure of being an incoming 1L at UCLA Law.
Very cool. And I'm Abhi, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a teacher and tutor at LSAT Demon as well, and an incoming 1L at Penn Law. We'll be your hosts and your guides through the trials and tribulations of the all-important first year.
And as always, we are quite honored to be. As we set forth into this brave new world, this show is essentially going to memorialize our experience in law school, hopefully serving as a pathway for those of you who hope to be in our shoes one day. And of course, along the way, we'll be bringing along the friends we make. So we'll be doing some interviews with other law students, lawyers, and law school graduates, just to kind of give you guys an inside look of what it's like to be in law school and beyond. So whether you're prepping for law school or already in the thick of it, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Let's jump into our update segment. Aaminah, what updates do you have from last week? I know you were on the hunt for the apartment.
Yeah, I was on the hunt for the apartment and the roommate, and things were moving and shaking. But this week, actually just yesterday, I signed a lease. We'll see if my roommate actually ends up signing it, but I signed a lease. It is my very first lease. It was so scary. Oh my goodness. It was a little traumatizing, but also very exciting. I was trying to tap into my future badass lawyer that, knows all these legal terms and understands contracts like that, to really just make sure that everything seemed, in shape and no, there were no red flags. But it was honestly a standard rental agreement. So there was really nothing that jumped out at me, and I am very excited.
Very, very lawyerly of you to actually read your lease. And folks, if I
Absolutely.
can advise anything, please read important like, am I saying you got to read the Apple freaking terms of service every time you update your iPhone? No, probably not. But for your lease that is like thousands of dollars and like you're going to be your domicile, your home, your habitat, um please read that thing, because like, goodness gracious, there's some rough ones out there.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was very much the terms and conditions thing that was like running through my mind of like, I never read this, and now I'm have to read this big adult contract. But in any case, speaking of also housing and moving and all of that, I think you also had an update about some things that you are learning you have to change over.
Yeah, dude. I've been in Philly for about a month now, so I was grateful and super happy to start the moving process before like the last week of or before the last week of summer. So I have some time to settle in, and I was like, oh, this is going to give me plenty of runway, plenty of time to like do the admin stuff, things like getting settled, getting routines set, or I don't know, going to the DMV and like updating my address and my license because I live in a new city and state now, and I have yet to actually go to the DMV. I was supposed to go. I know I mentioned to you the other day I was gonna go, and then I just didn't. I
Sad.
got lazy. Yeah, sad. I got lazy and just didn't go. And I think, like, PSA for all y'all that might be moving for law school, I think we have 60 days. Like, I think like a month or two, and it's fine. And then I think you might actually, not that you're going to get in trouble, but you could get in trouble if, I don't know, you got like pulled over in your new city and they're like, dude, this isn't your address. And your response is, I just moved here. And the person might be like, when? And if it's not super recently, they're going to be like, why haven't you updated your driver's license? So I'm like getting really close to that deadline of, it's going to be pretty soon unreasonable for me not to have updated my license. So I am super planning on doing that either later today or maybe next week or maybe the
Okay.
week after that.
Well, I would offer you my unofficial, not legal advice, which is something I'll probably be saying a lot in the future. But my not legal advice is that it's only illegal if you get caught. So,
Exactly. And I'm not going to be driving in Philly, so who cares, right?
yeah.
Um, anyway, speaking of deadlines, another big update. I think that both of us got recently. So our law schools have started emailing us about stuff like, hey, get your immunization records in, get your health records in, your health insurance. I signed up for Penn's student health insurance plan because it gets baked into my tuition, and I have a full tuition scholarship to the GI Bill. So I actually don't have to pay for health insurance through the school, which is huge. Um, but yeah, folks, like the law school starts sending you stuff and you have to start doing paperwork, even in late June, early July.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest surprises, when I was in college, I don't recall having been mandated to get insurance. I mean, I've always had insurance through my family anyway, but being mandated to get insurance, I
You
don't
do
remember
you do
that.
have to have health insurance when you're a student. You're
Okay, so
probably
this is
on
a
your family
privilege
plan.
thing. Yike. Yikes. Sorry,
Well, I think
guys.
a lot of young people are on their families. What is it now?
Yeah.
26. So most people under
Yeah,
26 are
yeah,
just
yeah,
on
yeah.
their family plan, which is totally fine.
Exactly. Right. But so now getting the stuff in the law school, UCLA, to my knowledge, automatically enrolls you in health insurance and you have to opt out if you
Yep.
don't need it. And yeah, I don't think our health insurance is included in our tuition because I too have a full tuition and fees scholarship. And so I don't think that's actually included in that. And it's like something like 3,000, almost $4,000. So thank you for that reminder. I definitely need to opt out of that. But yeah, these
Yeah.
are things, yeah, that you just don't even realize until it's happening to you.
And if you don't opt out, they will just charge you. So
They
like
will,
you're gonna
absolutely.
start you're gonna start getting emails. So I got my email I think sometime this week or last week of like, hey, we updated your student financial account. And so I logged in to the financial portal, and there it was. They charged me tuition for the semester already, and then
Wow.
thankfully the line under it said pending financial credits. And thank goodness for the GI Bill, and thank goodness for scholarships, because the numbers matched, and I owed $0. So, um, yeah, if you're, and I think probably one of your student portal probably looks pretty similar, Amina, if you pulled it up. But um, yeah, I just think like they start charging you, and then they're like, hey, if you can't pay, and if God forbid you haven't figured out how to finance your education yet, they start sending you emails like, okay, well, we have payment plans. If you pull out loans above the cost of tuition, we can refund them, and that money can be used for living expenses. So the money stuff starts before school starts. Something to
Yeah.
keep in mind.
Which that's always the hardest part for me, like keeping track of all these deadlines. And there are so many, like Abby, you mentioned immunization records as well. That's like a dual thing because it's not just getting the information to the school, it's also if you need to update your immunization, scheduling appointments with your doctor, which of course
Yep.
can take time. So that's something else to be aware of. There's administrative stuff like my school required, even though your CAS report, which as you may recall from the last episode, get your CAS report with your application prior to doing that. But in any case, even though your CAS report includes your transcripts from the institution from which you graduated, you also have to, for UCLA, you also have to send another copy of your official transcripts
I had to
before
do
the
this.
start of school.
I had to do the same for Penn. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they took another $8 from me, man,
Yeah.
through Parchment. I mean, God bless Parchment for being a
Right.
very easy to use
Yeah.
digital, whatever. But the costs never stop.
Yeah. And even that, like on my portal, it was like, oh, have it mailed to the school. And then if you actually click into another page on a separate link, yada, yada, blah, 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 they're like, oh, yeah, you can just email it to us at this
Yes.
address. So even that, like I ended up probably paying more to have a physical copy mailed. But neither here nor there.
Sad. Yeah, yeah.
Very
I just
sad.
you can so yeah, PSA in something like Parchment or whatever portal that your undergrad. So to be clear, your undergraduate registrar's page will tell you how to get your transcript sent from your undergrad. So for me, I went to Yale.com or whatever. It's probably not that. Yale.edu or whatever. Registrar.yale.edu. And there was a tab on the right side that was like, do you need us to send your transcript somewhere? Too easy. And then there was a link to Yale's Parchment portal, and then I like you pointed out, I put in the email address of the person to whom I had to send the transcript, and they were
Yeah.
like, "Cool, that'll be an easy $8." And I said,
Yeah.
"Damn, that could have been lunch today, but okay."
Right.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, and then it just magically zips over, and then within a couple days, Penn was like, "Hey, you're good, we got it." They also had me send a college certification form. I don't know if you had to do that for UCLA, but I had to actually send an email to a real human being at the registrar's office of my undergraduate institution, and essentially I had to just certify like, hey, I did attend, and you as the registrar are saying thumbs up. Abhi went to Yale. He graduated this year. Blah blah blah. And I had to ask them to email that PDF, a human being to email a PDF to another human being at Penn. And I was like, man, it's 2025, folks. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't think I had to do all of that, which, by the way, I just want everybody to hear that Obi said he went to Yale multiple times. He was flexing on me incredibly, and I receive it.
Whatever, dude.
Um, but
Yeah, a tiny private school in New Haven, Connecticut. Yeah.
yeah, just little no-name school. But in any case, yeah, I don't think we had to send a certification of like attendance, to my knowledge. I guess this is something I should double check
And this is
on.
another thing. It's like your summer checklist might be
Yeah,
different than ours. And I guess the takeaway here is read that shit carefully. You don't want to start fucking stuff up the summer before you even start attending, which
no,
is
yeah.
stressful. Like I don't want to phrase it that way. That's stressful, but like I don't know. Just pay attention. They sent me a nice little checklist. They probably sent you a checklist of just like, hey,
Hmm.
here's the stuff you have to take care of.
Hmm.
Send those forms in. Send your transcript in. Um, yeah, like sign up for your school ID. So like I had to like take a selfie and like apply for a school ID. They rejected my first selfie. They were like,
No.
there's too much shoulder in this one. And I was like, this is my passport picture. I
Oh,
used my
yike.
passport
Oh,
picture
yike.
and I sent it in thinking surely the US government is not more lax on photo ID requirements than the University of Pennsylvania.
Surely
And lo
not.
and behold, they kicked back my passport picture saying too much shoulder. And I said, okay, fine, whatever.
No,
So
that's so
that's a
funny.
sad story.
I was also gonna use my passport photo, but then I was like, what if I just didn't? And I went and I have like a ring light. It was a whole setup, and I took a nice photo that got approved first time out the gate. But yeah, that was another thing. I
Damn.
had to submit that by like yesterday. I had to submit it by yesterday, which I just
Yeah.
sent it in right under the wire.
Ours was June 30th or something. So,
Oh wow.
so folks, yeah, you're gonna start getting this checklist stuff in the email via your email, as early as June, and you're gonna have deadlines that you have to hit by the end of June sometimes, or by the middle of July sometimes. So, I get it. Like if you're planning on traveling or taking it easy, you're spending
Hmm.
time with family over the summer. Absolutely get it. Just make sure you monitor that email that you've given the school, so that they can continue to communicate deadlines and stuff to you.
And they
Um,
will. They will be sending you
and
emails
they
ad nauseum,
will. They do be
especially the
sending
things
emails.
that you have to pay for. They're gonna be like, hey girl, so just FYI, you have not sent your money in. Like, I recently also got a housing offer from UCLA, and they took their sweet time making the housing offers. We had to apply back in May, and they're like, yeah, we'll get back to you sometime in July. But now that they've given me the housing offer, every day since they've given me an email like, hey, just so you know, you still have to accept it. You have to accept it. You have to accept it. I'm like, I got it. Relax. I'm on it. But yeah, so these are the things to be mindful of.
Yeah.
Also, I know, Abby, we talked a bit about this. SNAP programs, EBT cards in California, to my knowledge, from what I've heard, law students are automatically eligible for getting an EBT card through the CalFresh program. So that's something to be aware of, like seeing what other resources you may qualify for as a student, once again. What about you, Abby? Anything like that on your end?
I did some research too. So in Pennsylvania, it seems like there's not a specific carve out for students. Now, I may be wrong on that. So any PA folks out there, if you're listening, if I'm wrong, please correct me. I don't think there's a specific carve out like there seems to be for California for students. But there are like income thresholds. So
Yeah.
if you're just a human being in general, who has below X amount of income, you qualify for certain government benefits that honestly super helpful. Like paying for groceries, not trivial, right? And what's cool is I did notice for PA, they don't count financial aid, scholarships, tax non-taxable benefits. So like I get some veterans benefits, or like the GI, like God forbid they like counted my GI Bill money as income.
Mm,
That would be a disaster. So they don't, for the record. A lot of
yeah.
states don't do that. They say, okay, if you're getting scholarships, if you're getting financial aid from your school, we're not going to count that as income. So you might still qualify for those income thresholds, and you might qualify for some of these really crucial benefits that might help you pay for stuff like groceries. And that's the kind of stuff we have to start thinking about, folks, because being a student ain't cheap, and
No.
food ain't cheap in 2025. Thanks,
Oh
Biden.
my God, no.
Yeah. Uh, But yeah. So that's a thing to think about. And
Yeah.
just finances in general, like student finances. If you're not planning, if you're not thinking about it, they might catch you a little bit off guard. So that's the last thing that I would want is for somebody listening to be like, wait, damn, what? Like, what the hell are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
So hopefully, no matter what time or place you find this podcast, this is your PSA to like start thinking about that shit. Start thinking about the money because I don't want, it shouldn't be stressful, but of course, like money is always stressful for everybody except for Jeff
Yeah.
Bezos. Thanks,
Well,
Jeff Bezos. But yeah, I'm just calling out everybody today. I'm going to get this
yeah.
podcast canceled. It's okay.
Wonderful.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, right. But yeah, the finance thing is so important, and I do kind of want to do a bit of a deep dive into that today,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
especially
I
with
think
our
you had some,
residents.
yeah, you
Yeah,
had some stuff prepared. So let's jump into the
yeah,
finance stuff.
we have our resident finance bro, Avi here, so we're
I
gonna
am a resident finance bro. I only
talk
did
a
it
bit
for
about
like
that.
a few years, but I know enough.
Qualified,
I am not an expert, but I know
qualified.
enough to be a finance bro. Because finance
Yeah,
bros turns
but
out don't know that much.
yeah, so you're perfect for the job. But
Perfect. I can talk about things I don't understand with confidence. Hell
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, so for me, coming into law school, finances were the biggest question mark, which again, we will of course be plugging LSAT Demon because that's what we do here. But finding the demon was so important for that because it really shifted my perspective on from I have to pay for law school to I don't have to pay for law school and I should actually assert my right to not pay for law school. Not my right, but assert that I don't have to pay for law school. So getting the tuition out of the way, which scholarships and all of that stuff, very important. But getting the tuition out of the way, there are other financial pieces that I wasn't really cognizant of as I was getting into this summer, heading into the fall. For instance, my FAFSA application. I did not do FAFSA in college because it was like a waste of time for me. Because I knew I wasn't going to get any aid anyway. And so coming into now doing this graduate degree, getting my scholarship, I had a panic attack moment. And I think, Abby, I don't know if you had a similar one, but I had a panic attack moment where I was like, oh shit, do I need to do my FAFSA application to get my money? For me, no. But for people who get, I think, aid from the school, I think you might actually have to complete it. So if you do or don't, double
Yeah,
check on
if any
that.
part
They
of your
do give those
scholarship
deadlines.
is called financial aid, you need
Yeah.
to fill out FAFSA. And
Yeah.
99% of the time, of course, there's exceptions. But if any part of your scholarship or your whatever you're named, even if you get a named grant at whatever school you're going to, if any part of that is labeled aid, need based aid, you might need to fill out the FAFSA in order to access the rest of your scholarship. So just something to keep in mind. Again, defer the communications from your school, ask questions to people.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way. But I had the same thing, Amina. I was like, wait, shit. Do I need to do FAFSA to get VA benefit, like GI Bill funding? And I
Yeah.
emailed the little veterans email, and they're like, no, like the VA funding is like a totally separate thing. Uh, but we do need XYZ documents for the VA stuff. And I was like, well, thank
Right.
goodness I asked, right? So I had to like, and so for any veterans listening, like you can get you can get your certificate of eligibility on va.gov. It's super easy these days. They make everything automated and online. So you download the certificate of eligibility, or you can send a screenshot of the COE that you get in the mail from the VA, and then with a couple of other things like I think your proof of service, your DD 214, or if you're still active duty, a recent LES or recent orders. Just give them a few documents, send them to the financial aid folks at your school or the veteran folks. Like there's usually a veterans financial aid office that knows what the heck all these acronyms mean that I'm saying.
Right.
Um, and they will handle it for you. And I was really happy because they said, hey, if you get it to us before this time, we will make sure that they're applied to your account the second that the tuition hits. And that's why I was really happy to see, like, when I got the email, like, hey, there's been an update. I saw the charge, and then I also saw the credit. And I would have been really nervous if I didn't see the credit because I don't have an extra $42,000 in cash sitting around. So I really needed that credit to hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of which, so, like, I don't know. Well, I think this is different for you. Obviously, you just mentioned that it just goes automatically, but some of your aid you'll have to actually accept. And it doesn't just get automatically credited. I mean, for UCLA, what I learned after another panic attack, what I learned is that This will be a common theme you'll notice many times. I'll
This
be
is
like,
not
wait a minute.
this is not a stressful process, we promise. Just kidding, it's super
No, it's not.
stressful.
I mean, it is stressful, but I'm also extra stressy, but neither here nor there.
Well, I
Um,
think I think it's balance. It's a balance of like it's not stressful because we're in such, again, like we're so grateful to be in these situations where a lot of these costs are covered for us. So not as
yes.
stressful as it could be, but
Oh,
we're
yeah,
still talking
definitely.
about dozens and dozens of thousands. Like the numbers are so big that
Yeah.
even for people who are like super fortunate to be in this situation, it's still nerve wracking because a mistake means that you're on the hook for thousands
Thousands and
and
thousands
thousands
and
and thousands.
thousands.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So anyway, sorry to interrupt, but
absolutely.
yeah.
No, 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 yeah. So yeah, I found out that my scholarship is automatically applied to my tuition. Um, but yeah, there is aid that you do need to accept. And also for those of you taking out loans, who knows what the loan situation is going to look like in the future in particular, but for those of you taking out loans, there's training that you have to enter for your first time borrowing that you have to do it by a certain deadline. I think ours is end of July, early August, question mark. Certain deadline. Pay attention again to the notes, talk to your financial aid office, see when those things are due because that's also going to impact your ability to access that aid. So very important. Again, the emphasis on this episode is to really keep up on those communications from your school and ask any questions that you have because again, as Abby said, you're going to be on the hook for thousands and thousands and thousands potentially if these things don't go through the way that you're planning them to. So those are definitely some important things to keep an eye on. What else? What else? What else?
And I think like these are all tuition and fees and stuff that I
Hmm.
think people do have at the forefront of their minds, especially,
Yeah.
dude, if you're listening to this podcast, you're already probably a part of the LSAT Demon community. You're probably already thinking don't pay for law school. You're already on the same page as us on these things. But I remember
Hmm.
as a student, I was like, okay, got it. And I think you were in the same boat. Like, okay, got it. Don't pay for law school. What about groceries and rent though? Like you're telling me don't pay for law school, but I know that being alive costs money.
Yeah.
So, cost of living was a huge question for me as I was going
Yes.
through this process, and I'm sure it was a big question for you as well. How have you navigated this idea of, even though again we are so fortunate to have the biggest cost covered, but you still got to eat, you still got to sleep somewhere. So, what's that journey been like for you?
I'm just like, oh my God, just it's so interesting. Like, I feel like this is a time in my life where I'm really becoming the adult in my life, and there's nobody I can be like, can you just take care of this for me? And I'll just like show up. So that's really like been a big shift for me, which again, like I'm exposing myself. It's my truth though, so deal with it. But yeah, like figuring out cost of living, making a budget that I have to really be strict about coming into the year was a big tough transition for me because I just did not want to look at numbers that massive. But yeah, being really honest about one what I have to spend, what I can do within that budget and how much things actually cost. So for instance, like I initially wanted to say that groceries would cost me maybe like $500 a month. And I was like I was told by many people that that was a delusional number and I needed to double it at least. Um, so yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, and like, to be clear, folks, like you can make it work on 500 a month, but that's a really lean grocery budget for sure. And of course, like,
Yeah.
to be super clear, using dollar amounts isn't actually sufficient because every area has different prices for things. So like
Hmm.
somebody's budget might be X dollars in their area, but that might not work for somebody else, or that might be way too much for somebody else in a different area. So
Yeah.
cost of living depends on the cost of living of the city or the area that you are going to be going to school in. So something to keep in mind there.
Yeah.
Um, Funny though, I mean, I really enjoy kind of watching you kind of go through this because again, somebody who's been paying bills for a few years now. It's tough though. It's a hard transition. Like if you know if you've yeah you're coming out of college and things are usually kind of taken care of for you. Yeah, now you're on the hook for, like, you got to pay the bills, you got to put food on the table. That can be really stressful if you've never done it, or even if you have done it. Right? I've been doing it for years, but now I am going to be a full time student. Right? I am used to
Hmm.
having a full time income. So for a lot of listeners, something to consider in the transition is going from expecting a full time income, those two paychecks or however many paychecks you get every month, paying your bills and putting food on the table. Now all of a sudden I'm thinking, okay, I might need to have a little bit of a savings cushion because I might not be able to bring in a certain amount of money every month to cover groceries, to cover rent, stuff like that. Again, I'm super fortunate to have the GI Bill covering my rent, but a lot of people aren't in that situation. And so you might have to think about maybe drawing cost of living loans from your school, which sucks, but that's an option. I also think like, let's address the elephant in the room, right? Working during law school. For a
Right.
lot of people, just the reality. A lot of us don't have the we don't have the benefit or we don't have the privilege of not working at all during law school. So are you
Yeah.
planning on working? I mean, I don't want to expose you, but are you thinking about it
Um,
at least?
I am thinking about donating my time in exchange for money, in exchange
Yes.
for monetary donation to me.
Yes.
Yeah. So I am thinking about working, and that's another thing, like another budget to be honest about. Yeah, because law school's a 9 to 5 at minimum. I hear it's more like a 9 to 8 in the first
Yeah.
semester in particular. Um, so yeah, I've definitely been thinking about that in terms of like trying to manage my time. And we talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but just being mindful of like kind of setting those patterns up now to see like where it can work and where it doesn't work, and where I'll have time and where I won't. Obviously, it's going to be completely different when I'm in school because there'll be a whole chunk of my time that I'm now spending learning and doing school related things. But that's kind of like how I've been approaching it, trying to structure my day so that I have like time to work and practice that structuring.
100%. And the reason we're being really careful with how we phrase this is that this is going to go out in public, and certain law schools have certain rules regarding how many hours, if any, you are allowed to work during your first year. And
Yeah.
the reason behind that is it's good intentions, right? Law schools understand that the first year is pretty time intensive. So the last thing they want is for you to feel like you have to balance too many things at the expense of your grades. That's a
Yeah.
really nice thought for them. However, getting a 4.0 in a class is not going to put food on the table. So the reality of a lot of people, the reality of a lot of law school students' lives is that a lot of us do work. Now, for a lot of schools, for instance, have like a 20 hours a week maximum, which that's actually a lot of time if you think about it.
Yeah.
If you're in class, like you said, like almost 9 to 5, and then plus studying
Yeah.
and stuff, finding 20 extra hours a week during 1L can actually be a challenge. So that's actually a really generous cap. At the same time, you gotta eat and you gotta pay rent. So, folks, my advice would just be, please be smart about it, right? Don't
Yeah.
necessarily volunteer information to your law school if you think it's not going to be received well, right? So if you go to a school that really discourages working during 1L, don't go into your dean's office and go, "Hey, dean, I'm going to be working." And they're going to be like, "Well, we strongly discourage that." And you're going to be like, "Okay, but fuck you, I'm going to be working anyway." That's a crazy energy to bring to your first year. So don't bring
Yeah.
a crazy energy to your first year. Just be reasonable, right? Like
Yeah.
find a few hours to make some money, and hopefully it's flexible work. Even if it's not, I get it, right? You got to eat, you got to pay rent. So be
Yeah.
reasonable. Don't necessarily announce to the world that you are going to be breaking a rule at your law school. That would
Yeah,
be
don't do what I
unwise.
just did for sure.
Well, again, and we're talking in generalizations here, right? We're saying we
Hypotheticals,
might be working.
absolutely.
Yeah, we might think about working. Things are expensive, la la la, right? But again, don't be dumb about it. Don't like if your law school's like, hey, this after school event is mandatory. It's like a mandatory whatever event at a professor's whatever, and you fucking reply all to your whole law school. It's like, sorry, can't miss work, can't make this mandatory event. Got to go to
Yeah.
work. They're gonna be like, hey man, you got to quit your job, which would be terrible because again, like there's ways to kind of keep this conversation open. There's ways to keep this reasonable. So I
Hmm.
would just encourage some discretion, perhaps.
Yeah, and I would just say too, I mean, I know Abhi said that 4.0s don't put food on the table, and I would say they don't put food on the table yet, but again, your grades are important.
It's a
Your
balance.
first semester grades are incredibly important, as you well know if you have done any research into what it's like to actually be in law school. Because of course, like that's where your first summer jobs are really looking to see like who is this potential candidate for this position. So yeah, they don't put food on the table yet, but they will.
They
So
will, right?
keep an
Yeah, the
eye on
better your
that.
grades are, the better jobs you're going to get out of school. Generally speaking, that's generally true.
Hmm.
So you're absolutely right. 4.0s don't put food on the table yet. Similarly, 2.0s might take food off the table in the
Right.
future. So
Right.
everything's a balance. School comes first, but
Money
just
is
being
also a
realistic about,
thing.
yeah, money's also a thing. So just
Yeah.
something to think about, folks, as you're coming into it. Again, not meant to stress anybody out. I just want to emphasize that. Like, none of the stuff we're talking about is meant to induce stress. We just want to be transparent about what's going on in our heads as we're navigating this summer,
Yeah.
so that hopefully it's just a little bit less of a surprise for you guys. So
Yeah. And what's going on in your head, Abby? Do you have a hypothetical plan for a hypothetical situation where you might be working?
yeah, I will hypothetically for sure be working, right? And it's just a matter of, and I looked it up. Like, I think my school has a 20-hour limit, but they strongly
Hmm.
discourage working your first year. I'm just gonna again, I'm gonna be reasonable about it. I'm not gonna take on so much work that it affects my grades. But I have an understanding. I'm a grown up, and I know that sometimes you just gotta do hard shit. Like, you gotta work if you want to eat, and you gotta study hard if you want to do well in school. And 1L is one of those rare occasions where instead of balancing those, you actually just need both. You
Yeah.
actually just need both of those. So it's okay. You're signing up. Everybody listening, you're signing up to do a hard thing. That's okay. You can do a hard thing for a year.
You
Anybody can
can
do a hard thing
do
for a year.
hard things. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
that's in my mind, the Kardashians are the people who say that, like, you can do hard things, but I think that's just me repeating it in my accent. But neither you can do it, and you just have to be smart about it. And we believe in you. And check back in with us in November once we have been in the trenches of this
Yeah, and if
lifestyle.
like you'll see it in the video podcast. If you're listening to the audio, you might not see it, but in the video podcast, I think you're going to see like in our faces how exhausted we are. Hopefully
Yeah.
not.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Hopefully not, but you might. This it's still summertime, so we might look back at this episode and be like, "Oh man, we were so naive. This is so much worse than we thought it would be." Or
Yeah.
we might look back and go, "Yeah, honestly, it was fine." Like, sometimes you just got to do hard shit, you know?
Yeah.
You just got to
And
do
we'll let
hard
you
shit.
know. We will let you know honestly and truthfully how it is
We
actually
will.
happening.
We
Yeah.
will.
But yeah,
Um, Speaking of finances,
speaking of finances.
there was an interesting article that you sent me about
Yes.
like law firms getting bought by private equity. Is that a thing? I thought that was illegal.
Well, so okay, you probably would know more than me on the finance side, but based off of what I read briefly in this article, so it is like illegal for non-lawyers to buy law firms. Like law firms have to be run by lawyers under, I think it's like bar requirements and all of that stuff. But, however, comma, asterisk, there is a thing called an MSO, which stands for a Management Services Organization, which basically allows firms to do the back end operational stuff. So, like HR, payroll, all that stuff. I'm saying business terms like I know them, but I don't. But like the back office stuff, that's not actually like litigation cases, so on and so forth. And in that way, private equity is entering into the legal market by opening these MSOs and participating in law firms through that kind of branch. So it's an interesting transition. Another article that I was reading was mentioning that this is likely to become much more common, and they even likened it to the presence of AI in the law. But yeah, that's the tea on that.
Yeah, and if you guys are wondering what the hell we're talking about, it's a Business Insider article, and the title is "It's illegal in most states for private equity to buy a law firm. Lawyers have figured out a workaround," and that's an article by Jacob Shamsian. And then, do you have the title of the other article and the byline of the other article?
Yeah, it is called The Legal MSO, Less Work, More Wealth, and the End of Law Firms as We Know Them. Very optimistic title there. And that's by Frederick
Ominous.
Shelton.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah.
Fred, for the ominous title. Honestly, to be clear, Fred probably didn't write the title. The editors of these get to usually pick the title. So
Hmm.
We'll link both of those articles in the video and in the podcast. So if you guys want to read them too, you can. Um, but like kind of the background of this is it's an ethics thing, right? I mean, like
Right.
it's we don't want law firms owned by non-lawyers because and then this is maybe a naive belief, but the belief that if law firms are owned by lawyers, they will hold themselves to the ethical standards of legal practice because
Right.
a lot of lawyers take their oath seriously. This is kind of something we were talking about last week too. Like,
Hmm.
being a lawyer is an important job. Like, it's a real job. It's an important job. There's an oath, right? When you're admitted to the bar, you are accepting an ethical responsibility. You are swearing to act a certain way, uphold certain values and principles. And so I think, and again, maybe naively, making it only legal for lawyers to own law firms. The idea is, okay, so then law firms, if they're owned by lawyers, will continue to behave ethically. Now the problem with this is like, do law firms always behave ethically even now in the status quo? No, right? So
Well,
there's a
no.
flaw
Yeah.
there. There's a flaw in that
Right.
thinking. But I think generally speaking, I think there might be a truth to it, in the sense that at least lawyers usually suck at running businesses.
That is what they tell us. Yes.
That's what they tell us, right? So a lot of really good lawyers are actually really bad at business, and that's because they're
Hmm.
thinking of things like a lawyer. So I think there generally is a truth to this idea that if law firms, small, medium, large, are owned by lawyers, um, they are going to be treated less like a business and more like a law firm, at least more likely than not. And I think
Yeah.
that is probably still true.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now, and this was changed. So MSOs, and again, managed services organizations or whatever the hell that means. Uh, it's a legal loophole, and they allow non-lawyers to effectively own parts of law firms through a second corporate entity. So it's kind of like how a private equity firm might buy a stake in a company like Jersey Mike's, RIP Jersey Mike's.
R.I.P. Jersey
And
Mike's
like
for
the joke
sure.
that we were talking about before we recorded is like PE has this notorious reputation. Private equity, PE has this notorious reputation for like buying perfectly good businesses that make perfectly good sandwiches, for instance, and like buying a stake in them, being an activist investor, being an activist owner, and then like slashing margins, cutting costs, and then just reducing the business to rubble.
So
And
sad because I love Jersey Mike's and I don't want to see that for them.
Mike, Michael from New Jersey, you have my heart, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but you've sold out. You've sold your soul. Sad. You sold your soul to private equity is like a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so like, is that fair? No, I don't think it's fair to just label the entire private equity industry as selling your soul because private equity can mean a lot of things, right? That could mean like individuals or small businesses buying a stake in other businesses. So to be clear, the definition of private equity is just anything that's not public equity. So like you or I could buy Apple stock because that's a publicly
Hmm.
traded company. If you or I were to invest our capital into a private company, the one that's not publicly traded, technically we would fall into the realm of private equity. So it's not fair to call the whole thing bad, but man, the stories we hear,
Yeah.
not great.
Yeah. And that was my initial reaction to reading this article is kind of a worry of like, what does this mean in terms of like, mm, the legal objectivity of law firms separate from the political and financial desires of people in a private equity firm. So I definitely like had a kind of adverse reaction to hearing that law firms could be bought. And I mean, I think it's a bit planned that way in terms of how the article is titled. But, you know, after having my residence finance bro explain it to me, I understood a little bit better. I'm a little more interested in seeing how this all pans out. I'm still a bit hesitant because again, like, as I said last week, I just have a bit of a pessimistic view on how money operates in this country. But,
Well, and,
we'll
and
see.
to be fair, private equity as an industry has not done a great job of improving its own image, right, to the
Right,
general public. Like they
right,
walk into beloved companies like Jersey Mike's or Chipotle or Starbucks, like things that I think food specifically is like such a clear one to people because it's like stuff that we eat or drink or
right.
taste, and then the food gets worse. Like Subway sandwiches used to rule, and then the food got worse,
Is that what
and
happened to Subway?
Exactly, dude.
Oh
Right?
my God. Oh
Exactly,
my God.
right? And that's when you think back and you're like, dude, I used to love Subway as a kid. Now, part of that's nostalgia, right?
No,
But part
sure.
of it is the sandwiches got worse. And
Why is private equity coming for my sandwiches? This is not right.
exactly. And now they're
I'm
coming for your
su
law firms.
no, no, I'm suing. I'm getting my own. I'm buying a law firm. I'm suing private equity for the destruction they've wreaked in my life. This is it.
Right.
I've decided. This is my
Exactly.
origin story.
And apparently you would be totally fine to do so.
Yeah, and I'm doing
But
it.
I guess it begs the question of like, can you ruin a law firm? Can you ruin the quality of legal practice the same way you can ruin
Mm,
the quality of a sandwich?
well. Oh gosh, can I say that I'm thinking of like public defense? Respectfully to public defenders, like I don't mean any shade because I'm really not speaking from a place of expertise. So please understand that when I say this. But what comes to mind in terms of like ruining the legal practice is kind of overloading lawyers to the point where they can't really give their attention to the cases that need it, or all of their cases in the
Yeah,
way that they need it. Um, so I guess that would kind of be, I don't know if there's a pipeline from private equity to that kind of workload, but perhaps
that's a
there
good point.
is.
That's a good point, right?
Yeah,
Because it's not like there's an ingredient that you could just buy shittier ingredients for, right? So like
right,
what happens with food places is they just buy cheaper stuff and it just
right.
doesn't taste as good, or they like, they streamline the menu and so like stuff doesn't taste as good. That kind of thing can't really happen with law, but that what you're saying could super happen, right?
Right.
A firm of 50 attorneys, if they usually do 50 cases, the private equity firm might say, actually, you're going to spend half the time on the cases and do twice as many cases. So
Hmm.
50 attorneys now have to do 100 cases. And so that's more money for the PE firm. But like you
Yeah.
said, public defenders are infamously sad. So so the
Yeah. And of course hearing you say that too, it just there's the entrance for AI, right? So now it's like
yeah.
we you have twice as much work. So now what are you going to be doing? Outsourcing it to AI, less fact checking, more reliance on technology to kind of do the heavy lifting for you, which of course just I mean, as AI improves, it makes it shreds and whatever, but leaves room for error, like huge room for error if there's not double supervision on
And
these cases in the way it should be.
and to be clear, like the reason that matters is it leads to worse outcomes for human beings, right?
Right,
Like God
right.
forbid that it's a race to the bottom and you're the poor bastard who can't really afford an attorney's full attention, which are already kind of like, to be clear, like already exists.
Oh
But
yeah,
if you
absolutely.
can't afford an attorney's full attention, you might get worse quality legal advice, which might actually result in a worse outcome for you. And the degree of how serious that is for your life can be as serious as going to prison or like having your
Yeah,
freedoms taken away
yeah,
for a really long time. So that's kind of why that matters.
yeah. Just a little
I
bit.
I think that like the natural response though, and this is just
Hmm.
like again, it's the LSAT teacher in me, it's the LSAT student in me that kind of here's that argument of like, here's how PE might ruin law.
Hmm.
And my response is all of the problems we're pointing out already exist.
Yeah,
So it might exacerbate some of these problems, but are we really going to look people in the eye and tell people that legal practice as it stands today is super fair and just and like not classist at all and not like the quality of legal advice you get isn't super dependent on how much money you make? Come on, right?
oh yeah, totally, totally fair and valid point. And of course, to hear Frederick Shelton of Attorneys at Law.
Freddie.
He some lawyers clearly think this will be great for law firms. Um, because as Abby mentioned, lawyers tend to be bad at business. So having the business taken care of could potentially make room for a better and stronger focus on legal issues for lawyers. So
Yeah.
there is ways for this to potentially be an improvement. Yeah, but it just depends on how it plays out. The track record for private equity, maybe not the best, but yeah, we'll have to see how this pans out in the future.
Yeah, I do want to just read a little bit more from this Business Insider article because I think it's super interesting. So this part reads: in June, Puerto Rico's High Court allowed non-lawyer investment in law firms in order to spur economic development in the territory. So to be clear, that is true, right? If you open
Yeah.
up an industry for investment, that's good for the economy, technically. Arizona, the only state that has done away with the ABA rule in 2020, now has over 100 law firms that are open to outside investors. So Arizona, this is old news. They've had this rule for 5 years. And over 100 law firms are owned by, or at least open to investment by non-lawyers. So in Arizona, large companies like KPMG, which is a large consulting firm and accounting firm, and Rocket Lawyer, we all know what
Hmm.
Rocket Lawyer is. It's where if you want like a shitty business contract, that's where you pay Rocket Lawyer like $10 and they generate a shitty contract for you. Those firms now own law firms in the state outright. The MSO model, which isn't limited to only Arizona, could appeal to law firm owners who want to retire or who don't want to hand their firms over to a law partner. So that I think is the best case scenario,
Right.
right? Where it's
Right.
like these are still lawyers. They just don't want to maintain their bar thing. They don't want to maintain their bar admission, but they still want to run their firm. And so they can let their bar admission lapse and they can say, okay, I'm not a practicing attorney anymore, but I'm still a lawyer. I'm still a person
Hmm.
who understands the law and they can still run their firm and be business people. I think that's like the absolute best case scenario
Right.
for this loophole
Right.
to exist for that person. I think that Rocket Lawyer owning a law firm is the absolute worst case scenario. That's like, to me, that's like Skynet for law. Because I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever interacted with Rocket Lawyer.
I have not.
Okay, so Rocket Lawyer was like the first thing to be like, hey, there are certain things that lawyers do that are super repetitive and probably automatable, right?
Hmm.
Um, and this was like before AI, right? They've been around for decades. They made a website and they were like, you can fill out this form and you can give us all the information that we need to like generate this business contract or even like form LLCs and stuff. So a lot of people starting their own small businesses will use something like Rocket Lawyer to like get a cheaper version of like a formation of a business
Sure.
or something like that, or just
Yeah.
basic questions answered. The problem is, it turns out that if it was just as easy as putting information into a fucking form and then hitting generate, then it wouldn't, like, you know what I mean? Like it's not
Right.
that simple. So it works like some of the time, but some of the
Sure.
time people, when the second they encounter a tricky situation and they look at like their formation documents for their LLC, they're like, wait, this kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't
Like, oh
cover all
shit.
the, yeah, it's almost like having a human being look at your stuff a little bit
Is
better.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit
Going back
better.
to make sure you read your lease contract, you guys. Read your
Yeah, right.
contracts.
Don't just give your lease. I mean, give your lease contract to AI, sure, and it might catch something you didn't. But like, also,
Hmm.
please read it yourself. Like, both things can
Yes.
be
Yeah.
true. Both things can be
Yeah.
true. And then the article goes on to say, like, hey, there is a large retirement of lawyers coming up, right? So a
Hmm.
lot of like boomers and Gen X lawyers are retiring. And so this might allow them to stay in place as like CEOs of law firms or as the head of these firms in a business capacity in a way that doesn't require them to continue practicing law. So
Yeah.
again, that's huge. Like, I think that's good. I think that's generally good. I just think like, man, like KPMG, an accounting firm owning a law firm, what could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
Right. Yeah. And also, I know they mentioned in the article too, like this MSO format isn't brand new. You said it was in Arizona from 5 years ago. I think somewhere in the article it said like they've been doing this practice as early as 2006. So, you know, not to be like mean to say like we don't have to be doomsday about this. Like it's already happening. Things are already in motion and happen in motion. So, and I think somebody even reported that there are firms who are doing this and have been doing this for a long time that are just not saying it because they don't have to. So obviously, again, these forces are already in motion in our society. We already are likely interacting with these in some ways. But as it becomes more commonplace, perhaps, we'll see what the effects of that pan out to be. Hopefully they're more in the best case scenario region than the rocket
Right,
lawyer
right. Yeah.
scenario.
And if you're wondering, like, how could it be that this loophole exists and how could it be that law firms have been doing this for a while, regardless of the fact that in a lot of states it's still illegal for non lawyers to own law firms? Well, the way they do it, and the article describes this, essentially the law firm is one corporate entity and the management service organization, the MSO, is a different corporate entity. So they're
Hmm.
independent corporate entities. The second entity, so the law firm can only be owned by lawyers. So sure, like you
Right.
put a placeholder lawyer guy as the head of the law firm. The second entity, the MSO, can be owned by anyone, and it acts as a vendor for the firm. Like you said, it's the back office. It does the marketing, the accounting, the payroll, the human resources. Does the real estate lease thing. Employs secretaries, paralegals. Hell, it might even take care of hiring, like servicing the lawyers' contracts and stuff too.
Yeah.
And then those two entities enter into a business agreement, enter into a contract. And so non-lawyers can invest in the second entity, but you can still claim that the law firm is made up of ethically independent lawyers that are in no way, shape, or form influenced by the second entity. Now, is that true?
Likely not.
Likely not, right? If you piss off the guy that's in charge of the MSO, right? Is there a chance that he can pull aside the little placeholder guy he has in charge of the law firm and go, hey, so-and-so partner at this law firm, you need to let little Jimmy go. He puked on my shoes at the Christmas party. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that person can still fire you, probably. Ethically independent, complex, right? How do you separate like a financial interest in a firm
Right.
with an
Right.
ethical interest in a firm? I don't know if you can do that. So, stuff to think about.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe we'll see some other interesting companies popping up as law firm
Yeah, if you
owners.
guys see LSAT Demon Law Firm or
LSAT Demon Law.
yeah, LSAT Demon Law or Thinking LSAT Law, hey Ben and Nate, this is how we do it, right? Um, this is how we can own a firm. So yeah, if Ben and Nate, for instance, set up an MSO and they just engaged in a partnership with an existing law, so like say they put me and you in charge of a law firm and we're like the
Oh, good
figurehead
Lord.
people, right? Uh, yeah,
What a
so like
choice. What a
Abhi and Amina
choice.
PLC, right?
Yeah.
And then we run our little law firm, and then Ben and Nate run an MSO, and they're like, hey, we'll manage everything for you. All you have to do is do the law. And then it's like, well, actually wonder, like, would there be any financial incentive for us to do that except for having all of our back office stuff paid for? Like, would they be able to pay
Hmm.
us?
I don't know.
I
But
don't
I
know.
I don't know. And I think that mm, I from what I'm reading, I imagine the financial incentive is just that lawyers can do better law and therefore they can grow their clientele that way. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
we focus on the
imagining.
law, and then the MSO focuses on the market. So like they put up the billboards and
Yeah.
they advertise and they get all the infrastructure set up,
Hmm.
and we can just focus on showing up and doing the law. But
Yeah.
again, I mean, like that's nice. That's nice on paper, but where's the moolah, right? Like, why would I give up ownership of that stuff if I wasn't getting something in return? So I wonder if there is like some way to figure out if these MSOs are somehow involved in paying salaries or bonuses to these lawyers. I'm
Hmm.
sure that would be illegal. That would be super illegal, no?
I don't I really wouldn't know. Well,
I don't know.
this requires further research.
We're just
We
making
will
shit
get
up.
back to you on this.
We're just
Yeah.
making shit up. We don't know about any of this, right? We're not lawyers. We're not MSOs, but we are podcasters, and we can
And
talk
we are
about shit.
interested.
And
Yeah.
we're interested. We have a financial incentive to figure this stuff out because when we graduate, if it makes sense for Ben and Nate to fund our law firm, then maybe, maybe we'll do it.
Yeah. We'll be demons at law. Like, wow. So many good, yeah. This isn't we
Demons of
should
law.
we should look more into this.
We should.
We should
And
we should
that
get
just
more
made me think
information on
that
this.
might be huge for access too, right? Because if
Yeah.
MSOs can, if well-intentioned MSOs were to offload some of the upfront capital investment and some of the upfront like fixed costs that go with running a law firm, it
Hmm.
might actually allow more people to open up solo or small practices without having to figure out a way to pay for, like, for instance, if I were to set up a law firm the day after I graduated, I would be like, well, okay, I have no money to buy an office. I have no money
Yeah.
to hire help. I have no money to set up a website and buy the software that I need, whatever. So if an MSO was like, hey, dude, we'll set all that up for you if you just pay us this much of whatever you earn, I'd be like, okay. So it might actually improve access as one pro, but then I don't know how many well-intentioned MSOs there are going to be. So
Well, yeah. Definitely something to think about, get more
yeah.
information on.
Anyway, sorry,
If
yeah,
we
I
see
got
demons
super
at law in like 4 years, you'll
exactly
know it's
demons,
us.
demons at law. I got super fixated on that, so I apologize if I was talking a lot. That's my bad. But
No,
this
no,
is
no,
really
this is
interesting.
good.
This is
Yeah,
really
this is
interesting.
good.
Um,
But speaking of law firms and graduating, Abby, I'm curious. We're talking about crushing 1L. Part of crushing 1L is crushing your legal career in the
True.
future. Do we have any content on paths like to practice, perhaps, or like getting into law firms once you finish law school? Like, what's
You
the
know, we
deal?
do.
What do we
We
have on
do, in
that?
fact. We do, in fact, have. So if you go to lsat.link/1L or you go to the LSAT Damon page and navigate to the Crushing 1L stuff, you'll see that we have a unit called Law School Basics. And so that covers everything from like stuff you can expect your first week of school, or stuff like what kind of course schedule will you have your first semester, so basic stuff like that, to it transitions to what kinds of things can you expect, even towards the last couple of years of law school, to include internships, externships, clerkships, stuff like that. And then finally, how you actually become a real lawyer, right? So what does it mean to be a prosecutor? What does it mean to be a public defender? What does it mean to work in big law? You might have heard the phrase big law, but you might be like, I get it, like fancy big law firm, but like what does that actually mean? We talk about what
Right.
the work entails, and we actually have conversations about the stuff that we have conversations about the content. We have conversations about and discussions about questions like what am I going to do after law school, in our live classes, our Crushing 1L live classes that at this point happen every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And anybody can come to those. So anybody with a paid Demon account, you don't need a live account to go to the Crushing 1L stuff. Anything basic and above can come to the class. We can have conversations about questions you guys have and stuff you guys are thinking about doing during law school, after law school. But yes, the point is we are covering that stuff because it's not that we want to overload you with stuff as you start 1L or before you start 1L, but we want you to keep it in mind. Like, the point of going to law school is to become a practicing attorney. So,
Yeah.
something to consider.
Yeah, and that's so great because I mean I've touched on the t crushing 1L content, but like that's another one of my big question marks, which we will definitely be talking about as we experience that in our first semester. But how do we get a job? Like many of the jobs that I've had thus far, I have not had to like go through the typical application process for. So that is another thing where I'm like, what is this? What is this world again? So glad to have somebody who can hold my hand on that one a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah, and we're
cool.
actually we're actually planning on adding a whole unit just on like recruiting, um like common terms, like
Yeah,
what
like
what
what is
is
an
OC
OCI?
what is OCI
Yeah,
exactly. That's a great
exactly.
example because you'll hear people throw around acronyms like that, and like, I think, at least for me, like, you're like, okay, like I'm just gonna pretend like I know what that is until I have time later to figure that out. So we want to help you figure it out, right? So OCI, on campus interviews, we'll talk about what those are, what they're like, why you do on campus interviews, why would you even care,
Yeah.
um, and stuff like that. So we'll have like we have huge plans, right? We're gonna have like a glossary of common terms. We're gonna have a whole like unit about how to navigate recruiting and how to navigate applications and stuff. So this is all in the works, and we're still actively building it. So if you guys have feedback and you click around Crushing 1L and you have feedback, please write in. And we'll tell you how to write in a second, but I'll just plug it right here. You go to crushing1l.com and leave us your feedback. We'd love it.
Yeah, we would definitely appreciate that. Well, yeah, okay. Super excited to check out that Crushing 1L content. And speaking of kind of closing out here, is there anything that you're looking forward to crushing in your 1L year?
Ooh, that's a good question. I am looking forward to this is a goal that I have. I
Hmm.
want to have done the reading before my first day. And I know that sounds like a dumb goal, but it's like every horror story you hear is, oh, like you don't realize or you didn't take it seriously and you show up and they ask questions and you don't know. So my secret goal is I want to have done the reading before my first day. I want to have kind of just thought about what the first day is like, and I want to have kind of thought about like how I'm going to learn this stuff. And I want to just be an active participant in my learning. And that's something that I kind
Hmm.
of took for granted in college. I
Yeah.
was 18, right? It's been more than 10 years, but
Yeah.
when I was a kid in college, I don't feel like I was an active participant in my learning. And now that I'm a grown up and I'm going to professional school, I just want to be an active participant in my learning. So that's a goal of mine that I'm hoping to crush.
That's a great goal. And I think being an active participant is something a lot of people do not do, especially people who don't have to do it, like don't do it. And it's really kind of to me like when I specifically when I was trying to learn a language and I was just like trying to get grades, didn't take in any of that information. And the minute I started like being active in it, like my fluency changed so significantly. So I would say for anybody trying to learn anything, that's a very important note to take. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have anything that you're hoping to crush in the coming weeks or months?
Very randomly, I really want to crush torts. I don't know why. I took, like, when I went to my admitted students day, they gave us an intro to torts class, and the case that we read was so ludicrous to me. It was like, gosh, what was it? No, okay. I think it was a kid, like, kicked another kid. And, like, literally, like, they're sitting at desk, like, imagine, like, you just kick your friend, like, in the shin, like, lightly type of thing. And this kid's leg in the end like ended up falling off or getting amputated or something like that. Not falling off, but getting amputated because apparently like it triggered some kind of like bruising and like bone disease, so on and so forth. And yeah,
Goodness
that kid who
gracious.
yeah, it was a whole case. And I'm pretty sure the kid who like kicked the other kid had to pay or was like responsible. So I'm interested in learning exactly what torts is, which I think we have a section on that as well on Crushing
Yeah, we
1L.
actually just wrote the unit on it, and it should be
Oh
live in a
wow.
few days.
Oh wow. Okay, cool. Amazing. But yeah, I'm interested in getting into that and hearing more ludicrous cases and learning more about torts. So
That's
that's
awesome.
what I'm looking forward to.
Dude, that's the best part of Admitted Students Day, by the way. I think like this is just generally good advice. If you get into some cool law schools that you're excited about, go to the Admitted Students Day, not with the expectation that they're going to wow you, but just go because you get to sit in on law classes sometimes. So you got to
Yeah.
sit in on a torts class. I got to sit in on a con law class, and it was just really fun. It was just really fun.
Yeah.
So would recommend.
Yeah, definitely would recommend.
Yeah. Um, cool. I that's all I got. Do you have anything else?
No, I'll just be thinking about this MSO situation henceforth for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I'm gonna be thinking about MSOs, and I'm gonna be thinking about the DMV, and I'm gonna be thinking
Mm,
about OCI. Those are my three acronyms that I'm gonna be thinking about.
very good.
Okay, well, it sounds like we're wrapping up, so I'll just take us out here real quick. Thanks for listening, first of all. We really, really appreciate you stopping by. That's it for this episode of Crushing 1L. So if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe if you can, leave a review, share it with somebody else in your life thinking about law school. If you have a question, I already mentioned it, but you can go to crushing1l.com or you can write in. We have a podcast email. It's podcast at crushing1l.com. Both are very easy. It's up to you. Do you want to write an email or do you want to fill out a type form? Either way, we'd love your feedback. And that's all we got. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep crushing it.